Hello and welcome again today. My name is Jonathan Hankins. I'm foreign correspondent for the Bassetti Foundation in Milan. And I have with me here Leah and Rodolfo Groenewald van Vliet from In4Art. In4Art is a really fascinating project. It's full of interesting ideas. It's very much related to the interests of the Bassetti Foundation, and particularly my own interests in craftsmanship and beauty and motivations to produce, really. From the website we learn that In4Art creates space for experiments on the intersection of art, science and technology, and translates the outcomes to strategic implications and innovations. Throughout the website and the project there are lots of references to responsibility in innovation and responsible innovation. And the project has also developed something called an art-driven innovation method. And so here I have my two victims here, and so I'd like them to explain to you. Well, firstly, could you give us an overview of the project, please?
Well, thank you. So In4Art is a project Rodolfo and I started in 2015. And we did that because we saw from innovation management, which is our background, that a lot of the innovation efforts are always focused on creating commercial output, creating commercial impact, having this tension between short-term and longer-term, but then they are overlooking how to come up with solutions for the grand challenges, because that's very difficult in a business perspective. And that's when we were looking at other points of view, other references, which would include more anticipation, more responsiveness, more reflexivity in that sense. And that's how we came to artists as a powerful point of view to look at ideas and to work with them within idea generation for more responsible innovations.
Yes. Where do you find your artists?
It's a mix. We find them through the regular channels, as going to a museum, going to art galleries, to fairs. We find them by going on the internet, searching for them, and sometimes they approach us.
Okay, and do you have... So you're dealing with artists that are aiming, they have certain aims to their art. How do you perceive that their aims and objectives of what they are doing fits what you would like to do?
That's a good question. There are many different types of artists. And the artists we work with is just a very small selection. Those are artists that either have an interest in material research, are fascinated with the next generation internet developments, or are linked towards biotechnology. And we have classified them into 4 different types of interests. And if an artist fits with that type of interest, then there is a breeding ground to work together.
Okay, fantastic. How did you come upon this idea of... Well, could you firstly explain a little bit about how the artist's artistic work becomes inserted into a kind of innovation process? And can you then explain... Well, can you firstly do that? How the artists would fit into an innovation process?
Well, that actually has 2 different routes. So the first is we actively scout for interesting works of art that have been produced outside of our aims or our goals. And as Leah said, we find them all over the place. Sometimes we find it interesting to look at it from the perspective of art-driven innovation, whereas the artist has never put that idea deliberately in their work. They are just an investigation on a certain technology or material, for instance. So the first route towards translating art into our domain is basically our own. We project our ideas on work that exists, that has been made elsewhere. The second is when we actively collaborate with artists, it becomes a little bit different. We get into contact with them and we start a discussion around a technological topic, around a material topic, often related to a specific sustainable development goal, or at least one of the major challenges that we are facing as a society today. And when the artist, both the artist and us, get intrigued with that, we start a collaborative project where the artistic experiments that evolve from that are basically framed from the outset on investigating that specific goal in mind. That is not to say that they always end up with strategic insights or possibilities for innovation. Sometimes it ends with being a work of art, but that work of art then has been developed along the lines of researching what technology does in terms of privacy, or researching how we can better make use of materials in a circular system, for instance.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you just give me a quick overview of 2 or 3 of the projects, just so that we can get an idea of what actually happens, what these artists are actually producing?
One example is Diana Scherrer. She is a German artist based in the Netherlands, and she's been investigating for more than 10 years how roots are growing underneath our soil. And she has been able to create a technique which makes them grow in a certain pattern. And now she can have the roots grown in a pattern, and they come out of the ground as a certain textile. Well, that's very beautiful. She creates different tapestries, different artworks from that. But it's also interesting to think, what would this type of method mean, for example, for farmers or for other ways of producing carpets and textiles.
Yeah.
Another project is from Isaac Monté, a Belgian artist, and he's been very interested in taking science out of the lab. So we're looking at the technique of decellularization, which is used in organs to take out the weak tissue, and then they could use the form which stays over for organs and to create new organ donors in that sense. Well, it's still in the lab, but it made him think, if we would be able to create in such a way organs, how would we like them to be in our insides? So it also reflects to beauty. If we can redesign that, in what types of way would you like to do that? And there he starts a speculative process around that.
That's fantastic. And so how, in terms of responsible innovation, how do you see that artistic input will affect responsible innovation and the development of responsible innovation in the future?
Shall I try to answer this one? Again, an answer based on 2 components. Maybe the first one, which is more related to putting things on the agenda. So another example that we could have used in the last question is a series of works by a Scandinavian artist called Christian Kragelund. He has been investigating almost anatomically what is involved in the creation and the production and the usage of PV cells, solar cells. And as part of his research, he came out on how little we have actually thought about what happens after the end of life. So we create and we produce and we use solar cells as a means to become more green, more sustainable, the transition to a more sustainable energy system. But at the same time, we fail to think about what happens at the end of life and how we prevent waste from these solar cells. Well, he creates beautiful works out of it, and we, on the other hand, we use that work, we acquire the work as well, and we use it when we talk to policymakers about the energy transition, to show them how we can still think about improving the way we design and distribute solar cells. So when it comes to how we could contribute to responsible innovation, sometimes it's purely the visualization of the research, of the experimentation artists have done, that could be a source of communication or influence. On the other hand, much more direct is the way through through artistic experimentation we try to, basically from a bottom-up perspective, develop new solutions, new systems. And a good example of that is a project we developed in collaboration with a Dutch artist called Reboot and Reuse. This is an artist working with additive manufacturing, with 3D printing, He develops his own printers, and he is using it mainly to print plastic objects. Together with him, we have developed a circular model for plastic design, production, and reuse of furniture. And therefore, we can actually ourselves develop a technological solution, a material solution, and underpinned by an economical model, try to set up new circular models that, instead of talking about responsible innovation, are meant to show how things can be organized and done differently.
Yeah. You talk about mission-driven collaborative projects on your website. Can you, I presume that this is an example of a mission-driven collaborative project. We talked before about values. Can you give me some ideas about how your perception on values and what values are?
So within our art-driven innovation framework, we have basically three main points of entries, and one of them are the values. The first point of reference for that are the Sustainable Development Goals. As the United Nations, we have set them that in 2030 we would like to achieve these 17 goals with all kinds of sub-goals. And we said if we would like to go into that direction, what would that mean for innovations? How can they contribute to that? And what kind of system are we working for that? Taking that as a basic, you go through either changes in the biosphere, in the society, or in the economy. Around that, we are linking to the vision that Mazzucato has created about a more green path for green innovation or a more care path for innovation. And out of the cat was jumping in. Out of those two directions, we have created a set of 8 value drivers. Those value drivers are partly linked to what you look at value propositions if you look at business perspectives. So what kind of value propositions will the innovation offer to the users, but also to the other stakeholders, because that's a very important notion that the things you will come up with need to have a positive impact or at least no negative impacts for the others. And those types of values have to deal with the direction. So you want to have an efficient use of resources, or you want to have a cleaner production on the green side, or you want to empower people on the care side or improve safety. Those are 4 of the 8 examples we use within value drivers.
One of the things that keeps coming to me as I speak to you is a question about a similarity between the responsible innovation approach that brings social scientists into the hard sciences and your approach, because it seems to me that the aims of the mixture and the collaboration and the conversations that will occur with such transdisciplinary projects is kind of similar. How do you feel about that?
Definitely. We are big believers that a lot more technological feasible than what we're taking out when it comes to addressing a lot of the challenges that we have, both technologically and economically and otherwise. So a large part of the solution is within the social domain. It is about behavior. It is about the ability to think differently in order to act differently. And that's why a lot of our work, although it is involving quite radical technologies, new technologies, it's not so much about the technology itself. It's about what we choose to do with that technology and what the outcomes of that are. And that's a large basis under how we think and perceive responsible innovation. The idea that it is good to pursue innovation and to pursue progress, but not at the cost of anything. It is even more important to think about the consequences and to identify and treat potential problems that arise with implementing new technologies or new solutions before deciding to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can give an example for that, one of the projects we work on now, which is called Prosthetic X with Isaac Monté, it's about how people can age more healthy and beautifully. It has to do with wearables, the different kind of wearable technologies around our head and hands. But while doing that, it means that we deal a lot with data. And that means we need to take into account how are we going to do that in a responsible and safe way. So out of that project, a second project emerged, and that has to deal with the data donation register. How are we going to create a user-centered terms of service when people use wearable IoT devices, and that they are truly the ones who are in charge of the data that is collected, shared, and possibly interpreted?
Yeah. Okay, and can you talk a little bit about open science and how you are going to influence the development in open science?
So the art-driven innovation method, it's work in progress. We are, it's action research, and we work with it on a daily basis. But the insights we have, we are sharing them on a dedicated website with the ambition that others can include it in their processes as well. So it's a framework. Underneath there is a database which we are now optimizing, including the different artists, but it's also a way for others to look at how can you look at responsible ID generation by combining different technology domains, artworks, and these value drivers. And the first step is that we created this website, but I'm also lecturing about it, hoping to reach new students. And the hope is that in the future, the art-driven innovation approach would be something that would help organizations to come up with more responsible innovations themselves.
And what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, we keep on working from our bottom-up approach with initiating new projects and developing the framework itself, because, as I said, we started in 2015 and we are still building upon more case studies to really come up with a solid framework for others also to build upon. And we hope that others will contribute to that as well.
Yeah, and within our experimentations, we're working on very different topics. So in one, we're looking at CO2, and not necessarily bringing down CO2, but more make it detectable in order to have people become more aware of what happens around them. In another, we're looking at transmitting touch over a network. Many exciting topics that are now in experimentation phase, where artists all over Europe are literally in their studios now working with creating devices, looking up technology, creating software that hopefully at some point become new art-driven innovation projects that we can present to the outside world.
Yeah, and mostly that they do their experiments, because there's so much knowledge and research in that, and for them to have this space to experiment gives us also a very wide perspective of what possible futures there might be.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure and an illuminating experience.